Hello, this is Joe Trahan, welcoming you to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, whose mission is to enlighten the world to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances. As the national leader on this subject, they communicate their educational messages through various methods, including this podcast. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody. Director of Education Brian Parker here to hang out with you one more time as the host for today's episode. Today, we're going to dive into the world's biggest international sporting event, the Olympics. Every 4 years, we watch thousands of athletes from over 200 different countries all around the world participate in a variety of different sports. As the Olympics alternate between the summer and the winter games, typically athletes compete in one or the other, and they usually specialize in one sport. But there are always exceptions to the rules. Our guest for this episode is one of those exceptions. We're going to be talking with Lauryn Williams. She was the first American woman to earn a medal in both the Summer and Winter Olympic Games. So Lauryn's going to tell you all about her Olympic journey. During this, she won a silver medal in the 100-meter dash in the 2004 Games, a gold medal in the 4x100-meter relay in the 2012 Games, and then a silver medal in the two women bobsled competition in the 2014 Games. So you're going to hear from Lauryn about her early days as an athlete, when she first knew she could make it as a pro athlete, some of the adversity she faced along the way, what she remembers from those Olympics, what sparked her transition over to bobsled, and so much more. We will also talk with Lauryn about her tremendous career as an entrepreneur after sport as well. Drawing from her own experience and her own journey, Lauryn became a certified financial planner, and she actually started her own financial services company, which is called Worth Winning. She also wrote a book. It's called The Oval Office. It serves as a guide on building a career as a pro athlete. Lauryn does it all. She's also a motivational speaker, a podcast host, a community advocate, and so much more. Not only has Lauryn done all this, she has accomplished all of it the right way. That is why Lauryn has been a member of our All Me Advisory Board for many years now, showing others that they can achieve their goals without the use of appearance and performance-enhancing substances. Lauryn has a lot of amazing life lessons to share with you, and we want to thank her for inspiring and helping others through her stories. So let's bring Lauryn into the show and get inspired together. Lauryn, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for hanging out this morning.
Brian, I am super pumped to chat with you today.
I'm pretty pumped as well. It's not every day that I get to talk with an Olympic legend, especially coming right off the Olympic Winter Games. It's good timing for that. It's also not every day that I get to talk to one of our All Me Advisory Board members, which we'll get into a little bit later, but I know we've been partnering for a few years now, inspiring others to do things the right way. So both of those things in my book are super cool, and I'm pumped to have a little bit of conversation with you, to get to know you myself, and also our listeners to get you a little bit more info to them as well. So I'm excited. You ready to do this thing?
Let's do it.
All right, let's hop right in. So I know all about you, and I've been doing even more looking into stuff you're into nowadays, and there's so much that I could tackle with you today. I mean, you've done so much, not only in your athletic career, but even afterwards. And so I want to spend some time in both of those areas, to be honest. I mean, so probably what we can do is split up our time a little bit, talk about your life as an athlete afterwards. I know there's overlap that goes into both of those things, but let's start with the athletic side of things, because that's obviously where things started with you, right? So there's a lot we could talk about that, but I want to go back to the early days of Lauryn just a little bit, right? Before we even thought about Olympic Games, right? But as a kid growing up, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. When did you kind of first get into sports? What were you into? Was track and field an early interest for you? I mean, when did you first know you had a gift as an athlete? Take us back to those first days of Lauryn.
Well, I did just about every sport that was known to man. I played softball. I did ballroom dancing, gymnastics. Basketball was like my real love. I thought I was going to be great at basketball, but I'm 5'3", so not a lot of itty bitty great basketball players, and I'm super duper uncoordinated. So even though I loved it, I was not very good at it.
Right.
But I was very active as a kid. My mom will tell the story of me getting home faster than our family German Shepherd, and that's how she knew track and field was the thing she needed to put me into. My dad has a slightly different story of me being at the Carnegie Science Center and racing a FloJo hologram and actually beating it. So I'm assuming it wasn't set at world record pace because I was only 10 or 11 years old at that time. But that's when he said he realized that I had some promise in track and field and needed to kind of nurture that.
That makes sense. I mean, there's two things that stick out to me about your backstory that I feel like are somewhat common with people that have athletic careers that you do. Number one, they kind of play everything, right? They're just kind of those kids that got their hands in all kinds of different sports. And I think what we're learning more and more is that's a good thing, right? I mean, you're training your body to do all kinds of different stuff. I mean, that probably in the end game helped you that you were trying a bunch of things, even if basketball didn't stick just because of, genetic reasons. It's still a good thing that you played that, I'm sure. So that's first. And then number two, I feel like I hear this all the time, right? It's like, people just kind of have a gift. I mean, if you're beating holograms and you're beating German Shepherds, I mean, there was something that you had just born with when it came to speed, right? So those, you hear Tiger Woods was winning golf tournaments at 8, right? You just hear these stories that, you had something from the jump. So that probably got you started in track and field, obviously, when you knew you had the speed to begin with. But then I'm curious, when did that kind of gift get you to the next level, right? Like, when did you decide, all right, like, obviously I'm fast, I can race, I can do these things, but when did the mindset change on, like, you know what, I think I could actually get somewhere with this? Like, when was even the thought of being a professional athlete a possibility for you? Was it when you got into college? When did that kind of first start connect the dots on that?
I really didn't connect the dots personally until my junior year of college when I won the national championships. So it was a situation where I was really excited about the fact that I had some promise in track and field because education was really important to my family. And so I knew that I needed to go to college. That was kind of like the next best step for me after high school. But I was also focused very much on getting like academic scholarships because I come from a family that didn't have, the funds to be able to put away for college. And, I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers, so there's a lot of us to save for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just really grateful to the University of Miami for the opportunity to get the free education. And that's kind of where I was working my butt off in track and field. It wasn't so much because I had Olympic goals or aspirations. I just really felt like I needed to repay her for giving me the opportunity to get the free education. So my junior year of college, I won the national championship. I ran the second fastest time in the world so far for that year. And it was 2004, the Olympic year. And it was kind of like, hey, it's time for you to do something different. My coach actually, one thing I really love about her is that she sat me down and said, it's my job to keep you in college, to keep our team winning. That is my responsibility as the coach to make the school look good, but this is a great opportunity for you. And it's one that may not be available. You could be this fast next year as a senior and become a pro athlete, but it won't be the same earning opportunity because there's not the Olympics coming up. And so to this day, I really appreciate her having sat me down and said, like, it's time for you to go pro.
Yeah, I mean, that story is almost it's not counter to your first story, but it's a little bit refreshing because, you said you had this natural gift and you were fast from the jump, but then it's also like, well, I was just grateful to be there, right? It didn't like really click in until I'm, 20 years old, which is, opposite of what some people are so driven when they're in middle school. I feel like nowadays, like, no, I'm going to be a pro athlete, whatever it takes. And sometimes it's kind of cool to hear the other side of like, no, it just kind of clicked and the timing was right. And obviously the timing was right and it kind of worked out. I mean, I guess my next question to kind of keep that ball rolling is like, all right, so you're a junior in high school, you win, the national championship, and obviously things are going in that direction, and you're being told like, hey, you could take this to the next level, you could get into the Olympics, you can do these things. As an athlete, something has to change there when it comes to, mindset, routine, how you go about things. Once you've learned that, like, all right, pro athlete is actually a possibility, it's on the table, right? I got to take things a bit more seriously. What is it that you took more seriously? What is it that kind of took your game to the next level? Was it kind of a bit more focused on nutrition? Was that the secret weapon? Was it just a routine thing? Like, what did you start taking on a bit more seriously when you learned that this was a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the nutrition piece of the puzzle. So my junior year, like you said, I actually thought orange juice was like the best thing ever. There's so much marketing and, different information out there that's pushing various products on us. Orange juice is good for you. That's kind of what I believed and I thought was great. I hated drinking water. And so I pretty much single-handedly survived probably the first 20 years of life, drinking 90% orange juice and then maybe 10% other liquids occasionally when orange juice was not available. So, orange juice does have vitamin C, but it very seldom is like 100% oranges, and it's really high in sugar. So like little basic things to kind of turn on my knowledge around nutrition, started to kind of happen. And that was, as a result of being in college, having more resources available. even just like Gatorade, that wasn't something that was super, exciting for me. I was like, I'd rather have orange juice than Gatorade. But I started to learn the basics about nutrition around my junior year of college, which I think helped me kind of get to that national championship. But you had to fast forward to probably I was 24, 25 years old, well into my pro career, and I was having a hard time managing my weight. And at one point I was like, okay, I'm going on a diet. And I was getting my master's degree at that time. And I was walking around with this jar of peanut butter. I'll never forget it. Well, I'd go to class at night and I'd take a jar of peanut butter and I'd kind of just like snack on the peanut butter. And I could eat somewhere between a half and a whole can of peanut butter in one sitting, during the course of night while taking the class. And I wasn't losing any weight to fast forward into the story. And so my coach, said, like, I think it's time that you start working with the nutritionist. At that time I was a pro athlete, so I needed to, invest the dollars in hiring a nutritionist. I was kind of being a TPO. I was like, I can figure this out. You just eat less, eat more healthy. And one of the first things that the nutritionist taught me was, while peanut butter does have protein, it is incredibly high in fat. And the reason you're not losing any weight is because 1 tablespoon of peanut butter is pretty much, like a full snack that you should be having. Eating a jar of it is like more than the calories you should be consuming for the whole day. So, nutrition did become my secret weapon because I started to realize the opportunities that existed with food. And I've never been a person that has been interested in supplements. It was always confusing for me, even before I knew about nutrition, why people thought that pills were something that could provide nutrition to you. I'm just like, well, they come from a lab. Like, how did they get all of the nutrition in these pills? They taste pretty gross. I was just confused. And during college, we did get like a fish oil pill and kind of a multivitamin, as a supplement that was available to us. And, everybody else would say they were out. So I would say, okay, I'm also out of them. And, and I realized I came home in 2004 from winning a silver medal in the Olympics after having taken none of them, that this wasn't for me. I didn't agree with it. I didn't fundamentally maybe understand my values around, not using anything to enhance my performance, but it was just like, this doesn't make sense. I won a silver medal without these things. They don't taste good. They're made in a lab. And there was just something intuitive that said, I'm 100% supplement free going forward. And that was also, like I said, a kind of the clear beginning of a journey for me.
Yeah. Man, there's so much I want to dissect there. It's so cool how some of that stuff clicks when you start focusing on different things. Number one, if we have anybody listening that works at like Jiffy or Dole, look, we're not like anti-orange juice and peanut butter, okay? Like those aren't the worst things in the world, but moderation, I think, is what Lauren's getting at there, right? Maybe not the only thing that we eat and drink. And then, the supplement side of things, I think, honestly, you were probably ahead of the curve even having that mindset. Like even before you were working with a dietitian, if you already had some like questions about, do I even really need this? I mean, that's one of the questions I try to get young people to think about all the time. Like, number one, like, do you know what you're taking first and foremost? And number two, do you really even need this? Like, is it helping you? I think we've gotten to a point in our society where it's almost like there's peer pressure to take a lot of that stuff because everyone else is, right? You're on a team and you're looking around, well, everybody's taking this shake and this powder and this bar. Like, oh man, they must know something I don't. It's just, the usage has gotten incredibly popular, right? And it's one of those things that we try to help people navigate through that industry and those questions and that issues. But I think it's kind of cool that you already had not only, your own questions about that, but your own success without it, right? And so that's what I tell people all the time, right? It's like nutrition. And sometimes students don't want to hear it because nutrition plan takes some effort and it takes some planning. And it's not as easy as looking for a quick fix in a powder or a pill, right? But once nutrition kicks in, man, that's how you fuel yourself. That's how you reach your goals the right way, right? It's kind of like if you don't have a focus on that, it's like our friend Tavis, who works with us, he's always like, it's like putting cheap fuel, cheap gas in a Ferrari, right? Like you got a nice car, but it's not going to go anywhere, right? So once those two things click for you, obviously it worked, right? I mean, you win a silver medal in the Olympics and it hadn't even been that long since you were taking the sport that seriously, which is pretty amazing when you look back and think of it. And that's kind of my next set of questions for you is about the Olympics and your Olympic career, because it's incredibly impressive what you were able to pull off over so many different games. I want to go back to that first one when you do make it on 2014 and you do end up winning a silver medal. I gotta imagine that's almost like a blur looking back at it. That's got to be almost surreal when you think about it. I mean, You told us kind of how that came about and your coach pushing you into it. What do you remember most from that experience? Is it winning the medal? I mean, is there something in your mind even today that sticks out the most from those games?
I think for me, it was having my family there. So a little bit of the backstory of my family being able to participate, I guess maybe with track and field, the national championships for college are in June. The Olympic trials are at the end of June. And the Olympic Games start, July. Sometimes you compete in August, but it's pretty much July and August. So it's a pretty tight turnaround. So to not have this on my radar at all early June to, oh my goodness, they want me to be a professional athlete. They think I can make the Olympic team, a week later, and then making the Olympic team, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for most people. Yeah. And my family wanted to be there to support me, but to get to a foreign country, to get passports, to get them expedited as a cost, to actual flights to get there. Traveling abroad is expensive in and of itself. I think we can all, mostly agree on that it's something you need to plan for if you want it to be cheaper. And then add that there's a huge event, similar to the Super Bowl where all the prices go up. It makes it almost impossible for someone to be able to participate. And as I mentioned, I don't come from a family that, had a lot of money to begin with. So what happened was fundraisers were started. So I split time kind of between Detroit, Michigan and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they started a fundraiser in each city to be able, my mom was living in Michigan and my dad in Pennsylvania and myself with my sisters. And the idea was just to get enough for my mom and dad to be able to go and participate and, watch their daughter compete in the Olympics. And we raised enough money for 8 members of my family to be able to go to the Olympic Games. And so, while I think that we put a lot of emphasis on performance and winning the medal, breaking the record, the time and the whatever it is that is achievement focused, the things that you actually remember when you're enjoying the journey of pursuing elite sport or pursuing being your best person and reaching your full potential is like all the moments and all the cool things that happen along the way. And so while standing on the podium was nice, I don't actually remember it. Because we were like, what did it feel like in that moment? As you like, I don't know, but I know that I felt really, really happy to have my family there. I loved hanging out with them after it was all said and done. I remember going paragliding for the first time and, like my baby sisters getting to leave the country. Like those are the things that stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I already liked you, but I mean, that story just makes me like you even more. I mean, that's such a great way to look at things. I mean, in 2 different respects. I mean, the first one, it's you're enjoying the process. I think sometimes we get caught up in athletics or even in other things and whatever the goal is, right? And when I get to that goal, that's going to feel great, right? But sometimes we forget to, kind of enjoy what's going to take us there, right? Regardless of how it plays out, like enjoy that process. And then number 2, what I really like about that story is, the people that supported you throughout that process, throughout everything before the Olympics was even a thought, maybe in your brain, like you made sure those people could enjoy it, the moment with you, right? And enjoy that ride with you. It's all part of it. It's all part of looking back and enjoying that thing. So I think that's really cool that's what sticks out in your mind more so than just the medal, because that's just a moment, right? But there's so much that went into that, which I think is a really cool thing. And that makes me curious about what you remember from the next 2 games, right? I mean, what's so cool about you is most, as you said, like making the Olympic team, for most people, that's a once in a lifetime experience. You decided that you wanted to do it 4 times, which is pretty incredible that you were able to pull that off, right? And so we're going to transition out of Olympics when I start asking you about the kind of the winter transition after this. But there were 2 games before that you competed at, 2008 and 2012. So this is probably going to be really an unfair question to you, right? Because we could spend so much time talking about both of those games in general. But just like you had something that you remember back from the first go around, is there anything you remember kind of from those 2 games, that's something that sticks out in your mind? I know you had some adversity along the way in those 2. Is there anything that kind of, sparks a memory for you when you think about 2008 and 2012?
Well, in 2008, the thing I remember most is, kind of like that coming up short feeling. So we win and it feels really great as an athlete, but when we lose, it doesn't feel so great. It doesn't feel great for anybody to lose. And 4th place is the most dreaded place to earn at the Olympic Games. And so I earned that dreaded 4th place, and I got to see what it felt like to, I call it like next level losing, if you will, because there's so much emphasis put on like earning a medal, that you're just like, wow, like if I don't earn a medal, then I lost. Like in the Olympics is the only place where you get 3 winners. Like as long as you got the top 3 places, you still did good. And what I didn't realize is, one, that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. So 2004, I got the silver medal. The girl who got the gold medal was no longer competing. And so I felt like I was the one that was supposed to go get the gold in 2008. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I think it actually affected my performance. I didn't do as well because of that. But then to finish in 4th place, there was a whole nother set of emotions of, I'm worthless. I'm not enough. How did I, end up here? I'm not going to earn any additional dollars. And there's all these narratives of negativity when ultimately I made it to a 2nd Olympic Games, like we said, which is usually a once in a lifetime opportunity. And 4th place is 4th in the whole world in that event.
Right.
And there's so much around, like you said, you're hearing this noise in the world that can become very distracting and make you kind of diminish some accomplishments that you do have, Like you said, it was not an easy game. I was in great shape. If they run the race 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later, maybe I could have won it, because I did beat many of those athletes, multiple times during the season and multiple times after that race in that same season. But, coulda, woulda, shoulda. On that day, I showed up. We all, started at the same starting line, and I earned that place in that moment. And I think we do too much diminishing, like I said, what our performances were. If you put your best foot forward in that moment and you got that result, then it's not so much about regretting it. It's just saying like, okay, it wasn't my time. What could I learn from this opportunity? So I think I started to learn the hard lessons of how to be a good loser in 2008 would be the summary of that long story.
I was going to say, just before you tell me about 2012, because you had an opposite experience there, I just want you to know that, yeah, I was never the fourth fastest person in my PE class in high school, right? So if you're the 4th fastest woman in the world, like, I'm glad that you've come to peace with that. So that's a good
right.
thing.
Yeah, it took a little while, but I did. And then in 2012, I would say the overarching theme of what I remember is, like I said, what I was being taught through sport, and it was how to be a team player. So track is very much an individual sport. Once your coach unleashes you, helps you get warmed up and everything, you go to that starting line and you either, do great or do awful on your own. And so there's a lot of like feeling, like I said, one, pressure, but also just the individual feeling that, I am what makes this thing tick. I am, the win or the loss. I am the performance. Well, in the relay, it's not like that. You come together and we take a bunch of people who've been working independently, and not just working independently, but competing against one another. And you bring them together and say, okay, now you're a team. You represent Team USA. And for so many reasons, that is a really, really tough thing to do. And we've struggled to create chemistry and camaraderie as members of Team USA when they bring the various relay teams together. And some of it has to do with, just the bureaucracy of like who gets to compete. So in 2012, I got to be a member of the relay team, but I was not at the forefront of people who was probably going to get an opportunity to compete. And it's because I got 6th at the Olympic trials. So top 3 at the Olympic trials make the Olympic team. And then they have to bring additional people over as alternates, or, because the relay is 4 people, they decide who they feel like is going to be best to handle that. And so I was chosen because I had made the 2004 and 2008 team, and we had a lot of new people that hadn't participated in the relay before. So I had the most expertise, even though 2004 and 2008, we did not even get the baton around the track. So it was an emotionally charged situation for me to be on the team, to have been a part of a botched handoff in both 2004 and 2008, to know that it likely was not going to be my place to compete, but also to be able to show up to help people do the best they could in that moment. And I think that the lesson that I learned by participating in 2012 was that it's not about like the actual performance, and what it means to be a member of a team is to help the team win. And sometimes your role in helping the team win is standing on the sideline and encouraging them, having the pep talk, diffusing, potential combative situations, and creating that chemistry. All of those things are very, very important for people to go out, compete, do the best, compete to the best of their ability. But they're intangible things that a lot of people don't get credit for. So that's kind of the role that I took on, because I knew what went wrong in 2004 and 2008. And so that was my contribution, was making sure that we stayed on the same page, that we had good chemistry, that, the poop didn't hit the fan for everything. That would be the thing I learned in 2012.
Yeah. I mean, what I like about those stories is kind of the mindset that you have now, but also the lesson that you're providing anybody that's tuning into this, right? I mean, there's a couple of lessons. Is like, number one, like, you look back and you taught yourself kind of how to face adversity, which spills over into all different aspects of life, not just athletics. Number two, you kind of learn the whole teamwork thing and how that works and how to function as a team. That also spills over into tons of different aspects of life. Just being a family is being a team, right? So there's a couple of things that, I think you learned through your process and your experiences that I know you put some of that into action and some of the stuff that you're doing now, which we'll talk about as well. But that's what I kind of like is, you look back, there's no disappointment. It's just that again, enjoying the journey. What did I learn from the journey? How can I learn from it? What can I apply from it? It's all part of this thing called life that we're all living through. Right. And I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool stories that, anybody tuning in can hopefully learn from themselves. Right. And I think the last story that I want to let our listeners learn from that I think is really cool, and the last kind of thing I got when it comes to the Olympics, is your transition into bobsled, right? Into the other side of the Olympics, into the Winter Games, right? So, I mean, take me through that a little bit, because if you just say, all right, I'm a sprinter, now I'm going over to bobsled, people might be like, what in the world? Or like, how does that happen, right? Like, you're transitioning out of one sport that in a lot of people's minds is completely different, right? But there's some overlap.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're going to tell me about that, but first, like, tell me about how that thought even came into your mind. Like, why bobsledding? How did that thought even happen?
Yeah, so like so many things in life, opportunity sometimes knocks, and you can either be aware that it is knocking and kind of walk through the door, or you can be completely unaware and miss the opportunity. I read an article about a girl having tried bobsled a year before I actually decided to do it. And then I ran into her in the airport and learned about how bobsled exists and that it is open for other people to be able to participate in, and you should give it a try. And it was really cool. I kind of signed up online, showed up at the last opportunity there was to compete for the year, or to compete to be able to be a part of the Olympic team, not even knowing that was the case. And so a really fun 6-month journey began.
And it goes well, right? Like, I mean, I read a story that, you're like, okay, I'm going to go try this sport. Let's just see how it goes. Right. And then you're like, you've had one training session and you're finishing third in a push championship. Like, that's crazy. And then of course, I mean, you go on, you get the silver medal in the Sochi Games as well, not long after you even first tried the sport. Right. So I know one of the reasons for that is just the physical crossover that you found existed between the two sports that people might not be aware of, but a lot of the gifts you had with track and field helped you push a sled down the course, right? So that helped. But what else that you learned from all those previous Olympic Games, whether it was the adversity, whether it was the teamwork, what is it that kicked in there that helped you be so successful with bobsled so quickly?
Well, I think it was some of the things that I mentioned, like in 2012, learning how to be a team player, because bobsled is a team sport, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to join a team sport if you don't know how to be a team player. And so if you had asked me leading into the time period where, before bobsled, are you a team player? Can you work it well, in groups? I would have said, yeah, I'm good at it. But 2012 gave me a real look into how to support others, how to really be a team player, and gave me those skills that I was going to need for bobsled. Because like I said, it wasn't about me winning or losing or me being a part of the team. It was about me making a contribution to make sure that whoever got out there was going to be the best competitor and be the ones that could do it the best.
Yeah, you relied upon those. You know what I'm gonna call this podcast? I think I'm just gonna call it Life Lessons with Lauryn. I like the alliteration of it. I like what you're telling me. I like how all this goes together. And the other lesson here is just like, just try it. If you what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, in your end, like, okay, if I don't make the team, I don't make it, but what's the harm in trying? And then you never know what can come out of it. Right. I mean, I think that's another takeaway from what you're telling us. I think it's all really cool. And it all led to just an amazing athletic career and Olympic story that I think is so cool that you went through all that, and there's so many lessons that come out of that. And I'm amazed in everything that you accomplished on the track, on the field, on the course, right? That all, half of it is on its own is just a really cool story. But what's also really cool about you, and where I want to transition our conversation to, is stuff you've done after that, right? It's not like you just went away and we never heard from Lauryn again. There's a lot of other things that you're doing. And so I'm kind of curious on how that transition started, right? Because I'm just going to assume, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that after the Sochi Games, after you win the medal, I'm going to imagine people came up with you with the question, all right, what's next, Lauryn? Like, what are we doing after this? And that's a lot of pressure just to ask someone that just won a medal, what are we doing next? But at that time, after those games, was your mindset, were you already thinking of like, all right, I'm done as an athlete? Did you want to keep going, or did you already have an idea like I got to transition out? And if you did have that idea, did you already have any thoughts on what you wanted to do next? What was your headspace at that time?
Yeah, it's really tough to kind of answer that question. And like you said, it's a very common question. But if there's someone listening out there, the one question I would say not to ask someone who's just done something really awesome is what's next? Because their mind is reeling, they're trying to enjoy the moment that they're in. And the chances are they have no idea what is next.
Right.
Sometimes people are able to plan ahead, but, as we live moment to moment, none of us are sure what's next. We don't know, as we talk right now, the earthquake could happen and we didn't see that coming. It's like, okay, when I hang up, I've got this next thing on my list of things to do today, but we don't truly know what is next.
Right.
And so I had kind of a bit of an identity crisis. Like, I don't know what I want to do. I had started at that point learning about financial planning and thought that was interesting, but I wasn't sure how the industry worked. I've been an athlete my whole life. I really love to cook, and so that was something I was interested in. But I also didn't know, like, okay, well, I did this thing. I did it in 6 months, and there's a season that happens every single year related to it. Maybe I want to do this a little bit more. But I also was feeling very burnt out, which is kind of where I was leaving track and field. And I kind of stumbled upon bobsled, and I happened to be in good enough shape that, from track and field, that I was like, okay, I can pursue this thing. But ultimately, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of mental power, a lot of, setting aside your time to be mentally and physically available to be really awesome at sport. And I wasn't sure that I had that. I felt like I was kind of on the slope of burnout. I was ready to transition, even though I wasn't sure about what the transition was. So I didn't clearly know the answer to the what's next question. And what ultimately ended up happening was I said I was done, and I was like, I'm on to the next thing. I started to study for my certified financial planning exam. I was trying to exercise because it was no longer my job. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to gain too much weight. I'm putting it on pretty quick. Let me do some exercise. Well, I only knew one way to exercise, because in sport, elite sport, it's like go hard 1,000% or it's your day off. There was no really in between or exercise for health and, this kind of middle of the road thing. So I didn't understand that. Before I knew it, I found myself in pretty good shape. And I was like, well, I might as well just do another bobsled season, especially since I'm not clear on what I want to do next anyway. And I got back on the road and went and did half a season with bobsled before I realized, like, I only did this because I didn't have anything else to do. I didn't really do it because I wanted to do it. And that's not a good reason to be here. That's not fair to the team, who needs you to be fully immersed and fully engaged and present so that they can win. So after half a season, I officially retired and started trying to figure out what the journey of life after sport was.
Yeah, I didn't know how quick that transition in and out of it went. I mean, yeah, it's just that's such an unfair thing to ask someone, especially, like you, that's been doing it for so long, to the next day know what you want to do with your life. Let's be honest, I think it's unfair that nowadays we ask like 18-year-old students to know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. I mean, some of it's just, we're doing it with Tom Brady. We're debating so much. Should he retire? It's like, I don't know. Like, does it matter? Like, let's let people live their life and do what works for them. We put so much pressure on these decisions, and you got to know what's coming. You got to know what's next. It's not that simple, right? I was just kind of curious where your mindset was, because what you ended up doing and what you're doing now is, you become an entrepreneur, which is awesome and also inspiring in its own right. I mean, you do so much now. I mean, I'm looking through your website, author, podcast host, speaker, community advocate. I mean, I need to go like write a book. You do so much stuff. You're making me feel a certain kind of way, right? So I think that's really cool. And that's why I want to spend some time talking about that, because as inspirational as your athletic career was, I think a lot of this is just as inspirational for a lot of other people in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, you end up starting a business that is called Worth Winning, and I'll put a link in our show notes to all our listeners can go check out everything that Lauren's doing right now. But at the core of it, what a lot of what you do is provide financial services to young athletes or just professionals. You help with all kinds of stuff in that world of personal finance, right? So tell us a bit more about the company, what Worth Winning does, and why this was something that you wanted to start in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was born out of necessity for myself. So Worth Winning is a financial company that helps young professionals organize their finances. So whether that is making a budget, understanding how to create a plan to pay off your debt, diving deep into student loan debt and understanding like what's the best payoff strategy there, getting started with investing, understanding your 401k. We get our first job and we're like, no one taught us how to adult. Like, how do I manage this employee benefits? Like, they're giving me stuff, but I don't know what to do with them. Taxes, insurance, estate planning, they're all pieces of your financial puzzle. And it's a lot to have to deal with as a young professional. And so I just help people figure out like what is best for them and how to align their spending with their values and create a plan where they feel organized. And they're pursuing their life goals more so. And they're using money as a tool to be able to do that. For me, it was something that I had to do because I needed to learn this information for myself. So I hired a couple financial advisors during the course of my career, but they weren't really focused on like financial literacy. And so without literacy, without an understanding of like what is happening with your money and what needs to happen with your money, you're always going to be on a path to make a lot of mistakes. And so as I realized like how illiterate I was as it pertains to finances and started to learn about it for myself, I realized that my friends also didn't know a lot about it. My athlete friends didn't know about it. My, friends that were lawyers and, going to law school and doing all this fancy stuff while I was out running and being a professional athlete, I started to ask questions as I went through the curriculum and they were just like, yeah, I don't know. My people handle that for me. Or I'll make a plan later. Like, we're young. Like, why are you being so serious? Or don't talk about money. I got all the negative responses. And I realized like, this is a problem. It's not just a problem for me. It's a problem for everyone around me. And I want to be a solution to that problem. And so that's how the company was born.
Yeah, it's super important. In fact, I probably need to send you my books after this episode just so you can make sure I'm not doing anything too crazy with my money, right? But it's a conversation that, probably we need to be having more often. Even just growing up in schools probably needs to be discussed a lot more than it probably is. And then in your case, like you said, I would imagine it was a conversation that wasn't happening nearly enough because being a professional athlete is such a, unique job that's probably just not even a thought for a lot of people. So I imagine you were feeling a need not only for, population in general, but for some of the populations that you had, grown up with and experienced, and just knowing that environment doesn't necessarily lead to having those conversations, which that's what I think is really cool is you've taken, again, life lessons, right? You've taken your own life lessons about things that you didn't learn about and decided, okay, well, there's a gap here. An educational gap with this stuff. I'm going to fill it, right? I mean, that's what we did with our foundation. We saw an educational gap in the topics we were discussing, and we decided someone's got to be talking about this. So that's very cool that you've drawn on your own experiences and done that and started a company. I mean, you also wrote a book based on your own experiences. It's called The Oval Office. I will also provide a link to that one, so anybody that's listening that thinks it might be a good fit can grab that and read through it. But you wrote a book that basically, again, takes your own experiences, right? And you try to help others on and giving them advice on how to build a career as a pro athlete, because that's also something that's probably not taught to a lot of people that get into that field, right? So was that also, built on a specific experience in your life that made you want to write this book? I mean, tell me a little bit more about some of the things that you tackle in the Oval Office itself.
Yeah, the book is really kind of my gift back to sport because sport has given so much to me. And so it is all the things that I wish I would have known, like you said, mistakes that I made that I hope someone else doesn't have to make. And I'd love it if they were able to, kind of look at the book, understand, oh, this is, what I should be asking my agent. This is what I should be talking about with my coach. These are the things that I should be thinking about when I choose a location, because, I look back on my 20-year-old self, and I think a lot of us do this as we get older. Is like 18 is when they first refer to you as an adult. And you're like, woohoo, I'm a grown up. I can do whatever I want to do. And then there's like 21 and it's like, okay, you're really a grown up. And then you get about 30 years old and you look back and you're like, gosh, I didn't know anything at 18. And I certainly didn't know anything at 21. Like, and then you start to realize how little you knew during that time frame and how hard it is to gather information to make good decisions. And so I just wanted this to be a resource for people to be able to make good decisions as they navigate a time of life where everybody's like, you're a grown up, but there's like no book on how to do adulting. And so that is where I made the Oval Office.
It makes sense, right? I mean, it's kind of what we just talked about, like drawing on what you know, but also drawing on what you didn't know and hoping to change that for others. I mean, I think that's just a cool thing and a cool idea. There's some synergy there between what you and I are both doing and obviously in different areas, but I think it's just another reason that we kind of got connected. I think there's some similar mindsets there. And that's, that connection is actually where I want to end our conversation, because you and I got connected through a shared goal. And that goal, and you've already kind of alluded to it when we were talking about supplements and things, but it was that goal of not just competing clean, but also living clean, right? I mean, that's something that you've always done and always drawn on and always been outspoken about. And that's where I want to end our conversation. It's going to relate to a couple things when it comes to doping. All right. This is kind of a confusing question, and you can pull out a couple things that maybe stick in your mind. But as an athlete, as a incredibly high level athlete, and along with a long career, I'm curious, number one, were you ever offered PEDs of some type while you were competing? Number one. Number two, were you ever affected in your career by someone else that was doping along the way, right? Those two questions might line up with each other, or maybe they're two different stories or something you want to throw at me, but I'm just curious, did that stuff ever come in front of you? And if so, how did you handle those things, while you were an athlete?
Yeah, so the PEDs did show up in front of me, and it was in the form of like someone selling supplements from some booklet. So there's a lot of different supplement companies out there, and those supplements are tainted. They have performance enhancing drugs in them. They are just like kind of straight out sometimes performance enhancing, but they're marketed. There's a lot of leeway on how they can name things and brand things. And so a gentleman who was a truck driver and, was just kind of doing this as a side hustle, had this book of like various vitamins and supplements. And I, because I had been paying attention, and USADA had done a great job of just kind of educating us about what was allowed and not allowed. And, I said, I didn't use supplements anyway, so I was already not going to be a good customer for him. But as I flipped through the book, I saw the name of things that I knew were banned. And, this is someone's uncle, someone's friend, someone's, kind person, Uncle Joe, if you will, that, means well and is just trying to earn a living for himself and has been told that these are great things to really help your body and make you heal faster and do these sorts of things. But all I could imagine was like, what if another professional athlete is his niece or his daughter and he doesn't know any better? And he's like, yeah, use this out of this book, this great supplements that I'm selling. So it wasn't a blatant, try to, hey, you can get ahead, let's sneak and do this sort of thing. But it was definitely a situation where you could see how some people end up using something performance enhancing and not really realizing that it was, because it's readily available kind of all over the place. And some things are kind of masking themselves as being good for you when they actually are banned substances. The second part of it is was I affected by someone doping? This is a harder question to answer. I feel like I was affected in 2004 because there is some question and uncertainty around whether or not the young lady who won the gold medal in the 100 meters was in fact clean. And it, was further, I guess, supported by someone else from her country having a positive drug test well after those games. So, as we know, technology has evolved and improved, and they were able to catch somebody who passed a drug test way back in 2004. It was pretty close to 2014 when they caught him. And so, like I said, she had a very short career, and I don't like to spend a lot of time like kind of, guesstimating or making, ideas or assumptions about how someone else did it. But there was definitely a lot of eyebrows raised and a lot of narrative around whether or not she was clean, which has kind of hung over me like a cloud. To not know for sure, and to even have that doubt cast over one of my competitors is something that's been emotionally hard to deal with. The other aspect was, ending up in a doctor's office where, once again, the gentleman was saying like how he was going to help, and he was helping all these football players, and I know how to do this, I know how to do that. He was kind of a pompous guy, so didn't really connect with him overall. But another athlete was also like in the same offices, or had been introduced to this gentleman as a place to go to get help. And he also did like physical therapy. So there are a lot of different services offered. I ended up like getting, he had chiropractic services and things like that, but also supplements and what actually turned out to be drugs. And so I told the athlete that, I feel like something a little shady is happening here. And, I talked to my husband about, what was said in our consultation. And he was like, absolutely not. Let's just, steer clear of that altogether. And that athlete didn't steer clear of it. And so, I was deeply affected by the fact that he was, in fact, in trouble, and ended up with a positive test as a result of working with this gentleman who, if I had been in a different situation, or if I had, succumbed to the pressure of him saying like, yeah, let's go, that I could have also like been trying to be a clean athlete, and, someone else actually have influenced me to become dirty. And like I said, it wasn't like a back office, like intentional set of like, okay, like this is how we're going to get the edge on people. I think sometimes there are definitely people out there that do that, but I think a lot of times that's the only way people think of, ending up with a positive test or using a performance enhancing drug. And it's really about, like I said, having lack of education, and not being around people who have proper education as well, and that can advocate on your behalf to make sure that you don't end up doing something that you would regret unknowingly. And yeah, for those people who do it knowingly, I haven't had an opportunity or experience where someone was maliciously offering it to me, or that I knew of that where they were maliciously using a performance enhancing drug.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious what you faced and what you've run into along the way. And I mainly asked that because, doing what I've done now for a decade and just our foundation as a whole, like I know that, I mean, we have average high school students running into this stuff and being faced with these decisions. So I'm just, in my mind, I'm always assuming like, man, like these high level athletes must be feeling some kind of pressure, must be, getting pushed this supplement or that, must be, showing stuff that can help even more often sometimes just because of what they do. Right. And so, I think it's important, just to know that this stuff is out there, number one, just because I mean, you mentioned the word education. That's kind of what we do is, we not only do we educate on that these issues are out there, but we do try to provide education to people that when they are faced with those decisions, like you just were, they have something to fall back on. They know the reasons why not to do it. Right. And that's what, we admire about you. That's why we partnered with you is you did make those right decisions, and you did do everything that we just talked about the right way. And that's why, a couple of years ago, like I said, you stepped up to be a member of our All Me Advisory Board, which for those that are listening and not aware of that, I'll provide a link in the show notes. It's just allmeleague.com. But we have a variety of athletes from across all kinds of different sports, Olympians, baseball players, softball players, BMX riders, all kinds of different people that have stepped up and said, all right, I want to be a positive role model. I want to provide inspiration to others. I had goals in my life, whatever they were, and I reached them, but I did it the right way, and you can do the same. And so you're providing inspiration to others to live without this stuff, compete without this stuff, whatever goals they may be, trying to show them that they can't be achieved without this, right? And so we appreciate you doing that. And I'm curious, from your mindset, when you first agreed to do that, why was this something that you wanted to do, and what does being all me even mean in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer when I was asked to be a part of the All Me team to just say yes, because like you said, I know that I've built a platform over the course of years, and while I'm no longer competing, I think it's great to be a role model to other athletes and to be able to participate in the advisory board and come up with cool ideas for how to best impact, the next generation of athletes and just people in general. Because I want to encourage everybody to be their best selves, and naturally them best selves. And so, yeah, like I said, it was easy for me to lend my name to a cause that I believe in, and that I am passionate about, because to have made it to 4 Olympic Games without using even supplements is something that I think, not a lot of people can say that they've done. And I think it could be a huge inspiration to some other people who may be thinking about, where do they fall on the line of what they want to do to be able to compete at the best.
Yeah, well, I can tell you with confidence that it is inspirational, not just for me, but with people I talk to every single day. That's kind of my role here at the foundation, is all about education, and I'm on the road and on my computer screen, talking about this stuff all the time. And it's so cool that at the end of our presentations, we get to present this to the people we're talking to, right? And show them what the All Me League is really about. But it gets to come from someone like you, right? I mean, believe it or not, when Brian Parker tells them they can achieve their goals the right way, it doesn't land quite as cool as when Lauryn Williams tells them that they can do that, right? So it's a really cool thing that we've had so many people willingly step up and just take some of their time and provide that inspiration and be a role model. It's one of the things that we want to thank you for doing that. But I also want to thank you for spending some time with me today and walking us through your story and providing inspiration just in this podcast episode. I know I got some just for myself, and I know anybody that listens to this will feel the same way. So thanks for all that you do. Thanks for being a role model. Thanks for your time today. I hope we get to do this again sometime soon. But in the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. It's really an inspirational story, and we love to see all the goals that you're accomplishing, and knowing that you're doing it the right way just makes it even better.
Well, you guys keep up the good work as well. It's been so important to keep spreading the good news of being all me and doing the best that you can to reach your full potential.
Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, a nonprofit organization leading a national campaign to enlighten people to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances and inspiring people to live and compete without the use of these substances. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and tune in to our next episode.